We're going to now bring in Mary Ellen Turpel-Lamford. She's a professor of law and the director of residential school history and dialogue and the Dialogue Centre at the University of British Columbia. She's an Indigenous lawyer and former judge. She is in Victoria. I know before we took those questions right there, I'd asked you initially what your reaction to today is, but I'm going to start there again. Can you describe to me and describe to us what your main takeaways from today are?
My main takeaway from today is that the Prime Minister attended to attempt to repair the damage that was done because he had not responded for more than 6 months to the 2 invitations to the community where the mass grave was found at Tk'emlúps, and particular because of the Tofino vacation debacle. He attended to apologize. I lost count of how many times he did apologize. What I did hear and see was that some people were really pleased and grateful that he came and have accepted that hand of repair. Others appeared much more skeptical and concerned about this. So from a political viewpoint, it was this was damage control and repair. The substantive viewpoint of what did he actually say? I didn't think he was particularly well briefed and up on the file, and he didn't say a lot. And in fact, some of what he said was just simply not accurate.
Is there anything that stands out to you that he said that was not accurate, that really stands out that for you?
Yeah, so from a truth viewpoint, I think he's quite off base. Like he said that Canada's handed over all of its records to the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. Not true, not accurate. They have not done so. He was asked questions about the 2015 agreement where Canada let the 50-plus Catholic entities off the hook because they cried poverty and said they couldn't pay their share of the compensation. He basically was of the view that that's been settled, when in fact, all summer, the Globe and Mail and CBC have been doing investigative journalism pointing out that not from government sources, but from other sources, that there were a lot of secrecy around that. And also the evidence did not support the claim that the Catholic entities were bankrupt and had no funds. It actually supported the claim that there was some pretty harsh legal trickery going on. And Canada, for years, didn't monitor what the Catholic entities were doing to pay their fair share. They screwed up, in short. So today, when the Prime Minister sort of swept that under the carpet and kind of said, particularly what I found quite squeamish was when he started talking about how he's a Catholic and it just pains him so much to see this. If he can't get through his own religious difficulties to perform the job as Prime Minister and address the need to have the Catholic entities provide all of their records and to ensure that civilian authorities get all of those records and examine them, this has been a shortfall with the government, and it's not been consistent with the TRC calls to action. So there were at least 4 or 5 key zingers I heard where, charitably, maybe he's poorly briefed, poorly staffed. Less charitably, I think they need to get their act together with respect to the residential school matters.
One thing that Chief Wayne Christian said in that last question and answer session is he cited a lack of concrete action that he heard from the Prime Minister today. Is that a statement that you agree with in terms of what happens next beyond the apology?
Well, absolutely. In August 2021, just before the writ was dropped and the election was called, the Minister of Justice, Lametti, put out a statement saying, we don't have the legal tools necessary to deal with the unmarked graves, to identify the missing children, to complete this work. They acknowledged they never did the work through the TRC. So what could be Wayne Christian is saying, you have to get the work done, bring it forward. And as well, other key calls to action, like they were supposed to establish a National Council on Reconciliation with a legislative footing to monitor progress and report on it. They haven't ever completed that. There have been a lot of missteps here. And so obviously, as I say, today was about some sort of repair. I'm not too sure how effective the repair was. Some people have accepted it, some people have not. I think the universal message from Cookby, Wayne Christian, and probably a lot of other chiefs, residential school survivors, and Indigenous people who know these issues well is going to be, nice words, you're missing action. Who are you going to put in charge of this matter? And essentially, given his missteps, he, as Prime Minister, is going to have to keep this file, if you like. It's more than a file. Obviously, genocide isn't just a file. It's very significant. But he's going to have to show something a lot better than he showed today.
All right, we're going to leave the conversation there, but we are obviously going to be discussing this issue throughout our show tonight. Thank you very much, Mary Ellen Turpel-Lanford, for speaking with us and staying with us through our continuing coverage here on Power and Politics. Cindy Blackstock launched the human rights complaint that led to the ruling, along with the Assembly of First Nations. She is the Executive Director of First Nations Child and Family Caring Society and joins us from Victoria, BC. Ms. Blackstock, you had hoped that the Prime Minister would use today's events to announce that the government would drop appeals in the federal court ruling. You heard what the Prime Minister said. What do you make of it?
I think that they're going to appeal it based on what he said. It would be, they've had the ruling for a couple of weeks, Katie, and their past behavior would be that they're going to launch an appeal probably 4:30 on a Friday sometime soon. It's really unfortunate because this litigation puts at the center the two of the top three calls to action by the survivors. Ending the discrimination, federal discrimination towards kids and families in child welfare, and ending the discrimination for children in other services via Jordan's principle. And yet the federal government continues to litigate.
The Prime Minister, we have heard the Prime Minister before say that the government is committing to compensating Indigenous children. But I know that in the past you have said that, you know, they need to stop fighting in court. Why is it that the Prime Minister's promise for compensation is not satisfactory to you?
Well, because there hasn't been a penny paid in compensation. And these are now two legal orders, one from the tribunal, one from the federal court, that has listened to Canada's arguments and rejected those arguments and ordered that they pay not only the victims of children who were unnecessarily placed in child welfare care due to Canada's discrimination, but also those kids who were denied services. We have always said, Canada, pay what you're legally ordered and required to do, the $40,000 per victim, and you can pay others more. What I think they're up to, Katie, is they actually want to pay some victims less than the $40,000 and pay some kind of shell game so that they don't have to spend more money to compensate other children who are harmed more. I think that's completely wrong. The $40,000 is the floor, and they got to pay up.
Before I get into your reaction to what we all saw today and to today's events and the Prime Minister's apologies, can you just bring us up to speed on, you know, how much longer the government has to decide whether it's going to appeal this case?
Right. So they have until October 29th to launch the appeal. And one of the things that was interesting about today's news conference is the Prime Minister said he's consulting with Indigenous groups about that appeal, but we haven't heard anything from them. And we're one of the parties in the case. The other thing important to know is they just launched an appeal the day the two Michaels came back from China. They appealed a order from the tribunal to make sure there's proper buildings to provide the services. So they've launched an appeal that we have to address already, and I want them to pull that one back and not launch further appeals.
The Prime Minister today, of course, we did hear him apologize directly to survivors and families of survivors after he after his office did not respond to multiple invitations to spend the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in British Columbia, meeting in person with survivors and their families. What did you make of today's apology?
Well, it was good that he went there. But as Chief Casimir and other leaders have said, integrity is when words have meaning. And it's not enough to just offer an apology and not fulfill the commitments that community needs and other children need across the country, and to litigate against residential school survivors. He needs to bring his actions into alignment with the words that he says in order to really have the moral character to be a good, solid example to Canadians about what reconciliation looks like.
In terms of those actions, can you just outline me, I suspect I know what you're going to say, but can you outline for me what it is you want to see, concrete, tangible actions to illustrate that the actions are matching the words?
Right. Well, you can start with the parliamentary unanimous motion from the House of Commons from June. Drop litigation against residential school survivors. Stop litigating against First Nations children. And do the important work that the Chief was talking about today. Disclose all of the records. Make sure that you're funding services so that families can recover from the multi-generational trauma. Implement the plan that the National Chief has put forward that would address the issues of housing and other types of injustices. The good news for the Prime Minister is there's solutions that are already on the table. All he has to do is implement them, and all that takes is political will.
Cindy Blackstock, I want to thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.